Welcome pod.
And welcome back in, everybody, to TCM Pod, the Chris Mathers podcast. Spencer once again with me as we get into the All-Star break in Major League Baseball, and just had an incredible series here down at Tropicana Field between the Atlanta Braves and the Tampa Bay Rays. We'll get into that here momentarily, and also talk about the Home Run Derby. The odds tonight, of course, one Rays player, Randy Arozarena, is in the Home Run Derby tonight. They're in Seattle, so that is going to be exciting. I think we're going to get into Spencer's thoughts on that here momentarily. But again, talking about a key series from this weekend, the Tampa Bay Rays hosted the Atlanta Braves. And at one point, Spence, throughout this season, for the majority of this season, the Tampa Bay Rays were considered the best team in Major League Baseball. Their record showed it. Their numbers showed it. They hit a little bit of a dry spell, lost 7 consecutive games due to the Atlanta Braves, who came into town Friday night. They won game 1 of the series by a score of 2-1 against Tampa. Then game 2 on Saturday, 6-1. And then game 3 yesterday in the finale of the series at Tropicana Field. Tampa Bay did prevail, snapping that 7-game losing skid. The final score, 10-4. And I'm not sure how much you kept up with this series, but I do know that this is one of those series that, what better time to witness, two of the best teams in Major League Baseball, even while the Braves were much hotter right now than the Tampa Bay Rays are, right before the Major League Baseball's All-Star break. And before we really dive into that, how do you view that matchup between these two teams? A lot of people think this could potentially be the World Series matchup if the Rays were to get healthy here down the stretch in the second half of the year.
Yeah, I mean, they match up really well. And I think the second game of the series, or the first game of the series, really showed that. Was this a 3-game series or a 4-game series?
3-game series Friday night and Saturday.
1-0 Friday, and then yesterday was the blowout. And then today, the Rays blow out the Braves. So I think that the series was evenly matched. Of course, people are going to look at it and see the Rays had lost 6 in a row, ended up being 7 in a row after they lost on Saturday night. But the first game, 1-0. The second game got away from them. They lost that one by 4 or 5 runs. And then today, they really dominated Atlanta. And, of course, the first 2 games were against Atlanta's best pitchers. And you saw that in today's game. Elders had a good season, but today the Rays really roughed them up. Or yesterday's game, the Rays really roughed up the Atlanta Braves. Ended up taking 1 out of 3. I think that we may see this series again down the stretch, though, in the playoffs. And, of course, that can only be in the World Series if, as you said, the Rays get healthy or maybe even add a couple of arms for the rotation this year. So we'll see exactly how that goes heading into the All-Star break, is whenever all the trades are going to happen in Major League Baseball. That'll be big for the Tampa Bay Rays. But we'll see how that goes, because I think it was an evenly matched series. The 2-1 game is what it ended up being, right? With the Tyler Glasnow in game number 1 is what I meant, not 1-0. But that was a game that could have been won if Brandon Lau made a very routine play moving to his left at second base. Ended up being an error on Brandon Lau. Then the next pitch is a 2-run home run by Sean Murphy, who's just an incredible catcher this year for the Atlanta Braves. And that's why he's an all-star as well. So the Braves are just such a heavily talented team on the offensive side of the ball. A thing that I see that could be an issue with them, though, down the stretch is their defense. Their infield is not great. And I think that what we saw in this Braves-Rays series was that the second baseman for the Atlanta Braves, I'm blanking on his name right now, Ozzie Albies, had a couple of really terrible throws over there to first base that would have been routine outs for a guy like Wander Franco, or even the backup for the Rays, the shortstop Taylor Walls. So that could be an issue for them, because it looked like they have some weak arms in the infield. Of course, Riley's a good third baseman. Albies can field. They've got a pretty fast outfield. But again, Acuna has problems in right field. And they've got a very young guy in center field in Harris Jr. So we'll see how that goes down the stretch. But their pitching is phenomenal. Their hitting is phenomenal. Most things are phenomenal with them.
Yeah, no, they're very well-rounded. And I actually as you guys know, I'm in Tampa, Florida. I work for 953 WDAE. As you can see right here, they help provide an awesome studio here at iHeart. It's Feather Sound Studios, iHeart Radio Tampa Bay. But obviously, I've had some pretty cool opportunities over the last, I would say, 16 months or so. February was a year. March, April, May, June, July. Yeah, about 17 months since I moved down to the Tampa Bay area. And 680 The Fan needed what is called a stringer, which is where you go get audio. It's kind of like you kind of run a couple of errands for some company. Well, 680 The Fan, the home of the Atlanta Braves, actually reached out and needed a stringer. I thought it was a stinger. And they needed a stringer to go grab audio from the clubhouse or I should say the locker room, following games Friday night against Tampa, Saturday night against Tampa, and Sunday afternoon against Tampa Bay. And it was cool because I got to go in. I got to go sit with, obviously, the head skipper there with the Atlanta Braves, Brian Snitker. He was really cool to talk to and listen to, and very level-headed, did not really buy into, hey, we lead majors in home runs. He was asked about that, and he just said, hey, cool stat. All I care about is winning games. And he was very level-headed, and that's kind of the general feel that I got from the Atlanta Braves locker room this weekend is win or loss. They won 2 out of 3 as they beat the Tampa Bay Rays and won their 11th consecutive series heading into the All-Star break. They were level-headed throughout the entire time. When they won the first game 2-1 on Friday, 6-1 on Saturday, and then lost the game 10-4 yesterday, it really was, just, hey, it's on to the next one. Now it's all about trying to replicate what we did the first half, do it again in the second half, if not get better. So that was kind of the one takeaway I had. Charlie Morton, 39 years old, he did his thing against Tampa Bay early in the series as well. He looked pretty good for a 39-year-old, and he was just talking about the fact that he wishes he had some pitches back, and they won the game when he pitched, and it's like, man, how much of a perfectionist is this team trying to be? And the Atlanta Braves were all that and then some, and we were talking about the Tampa Bay Rays, obviously, for quite some time here on the podcast and really across Major League Baseball as far as being the best team throughout this entire season until the last, 25 games. They've really struggled over the last 25. It's concerning to me, but they do have a perfect break here with the All-Star break, which begins today as the Home Run Derby will take place tonight. I believe that is at 8 o'clock. So the Atlanta Braves first team to 60 wins in Major League Baseball. The Rays were the first to 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50. So, to see the Rays kind of stumble a little bit, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen right now. But I would love for this to be a potential World Series matchup. The one question I was kind of asking around the press box today, or I should say yesterday, was, the Rays when they were at their best compared to the Braves when at their best this year, which team was better? And I don't know. I think if you weigh in the injuries and the fact that the Rays had to deal with a lot of injuries, the Braves haven't had to deal with as many injuries. I'll say the Braves were better in their prime. But when you weigh in the injuries to the Rays pitching staff and a couple of things, the hiccups along the way, yeah, the Tampa Bay Rays were a better team in their prime up to this point in the year as we, again, hit the All-Star break and really it's a fresh start.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Rays are the better team in the prime. And if the Rays can add a starting pitching arm and one more bat, I think that they are going to be a better team than the Braves down the stretch as well, because right now, the Braves are catching fire just like the Rays did at the start of the season, all the way until the end of May. And then even in June, whenever the Rays were at their worst, and right now they're really at their worst, even in June, what is that?
Oh, sorry. I was showing the camera if you guys are not watching on Spotify or YouTube, showing off my Celsius Fantasy Vibe sparkling Mandarin marshmallow drink. But sorry, Spence, I didn't mean to. Even in June, what?
But even in June, whenever the Rays were perceived at their worst before this 7-game skid, the Rays went 16-10 in June. They were 6 games over 500. They had the second best win rate in the American League over June. And the first team was the Blue Jays, and they went 17-11. So very close there. The Rays, of course, have been sliding as of recent, but it's nice to get a win heading into the All-Star break. But going back to the injury problem here, the Atlanta Braves early on in the season had some injury problems from what I've heard from Braves fans. And, of course, there's going to be injury problems in Major League Baseball, but the Rays injury problems on the pitching staff have been absolutely insane. Losing Jeffrey Springs, Drew Rasmussen, who's not going to be back until mid next year now because he's getting something put in his arm that's going to be permanent. I mean, the Rays have lost so many pitchers, and I think that if they can add one more starting arm, because their starting 4 right now looks incredible, because you have Shane McClanahan, Tyler Glasnow, who has been insane this year. His ERA might not be at its best right now, but his strikeout ratio is the best in the league right now. And that's the same thing that we saw at the beginning of the season with Zach Eflin, who's the Rays' number 3 guy. And on a lot of teams, that's your number 1 or number 2 guy. And on the Rays, that's number 3. And then number 4, a promising young guy in Taj Bradley, who I think is going to be a very good pitcher. And if you can add one more, then I think a lot of these bullpen problems that the Rays have had, at least throughout the season, not at all in June. The Rays had the best bullpen in all of June. But those bullpen problems will not exist anymore if you don't have to go out there. The Tampa Bay Rays don't have to go out there and have a relief pitcher like we saw. What was that? When did the Rays throw their relief pitcher against the Braves this series? Was that yesterday? Saturday? The 6-2 loss?
Saturday, yes.
And exactly what you see. You see a 6-2 loss because the Rays have to go out there. You put a relief pitcher in the game for 4 innings, guess what? You have to use 5 other relief pitchers to finish that game. If the Rays were to add a bulk inning guy with an ERA of 3.5, the Rays are winning way more games than they're winning right now because all they need is a guy to be the number 5 starter. He doesn't have to be great strikeouts. All he has to do is be able to get 5 or 6 innings, hopefully 6 or 7. But if he can get 6 innings per game, regardless of strikeouts, and only give up 2 or 3 runs per game, the Rays are going to be completely set heading in past the All-Star break and whatnot. So I think the Rays are going to be good if they can just add an arm, and we'll see how that goes down the season. But I think the Rays are going to be the best team in the American League, and that is exactly what's going to happen. I think it's going to be a Braves-Rays World Series.
Well, I was just about to tee up for that question, but you just gave away your answer right there because you do think it is going to be the Atlanta Braves and the Tampa Bay Rays come October when it comes time to win the trophy, the one that Manfred does not give credit to, does not love. He disses on the World Series trophy, which is unreal. But anyway, on top of that, this weekend, the Pugh family came down. I'm talking Todd, Father Todd, Eli, Isaac. They all came down to Tampa Bay to watch the Atlanta Braves play at the Trop, which is, we all know how people feel about the Trop. It's air conditioned. It's cool for this weather because it does rain a lot in Tampa, or it is very hot in Tampa. So when it comes to a baseball game, the actual feeling of watching a game inside Tropicana is very comfortable. But these guys, they made a trip down from Atlanta area all the way to Tropicana Field. They actually stayed in Lakeland, I believe it was, and drove to St. Pete on both Friday and Saturday to witness both those wins for the Atlanta Braves over the Tampa Bay Rays. And that was fun. I got to catch up with those guys. And for those that do not know, they grew up in our hometown of Blairsville with us. We became great friends, and we all have high expectations. Spencer, myself, Isaac, Eli, and of course, Todd, their dad, has high expectations for us too to succeed. But it was really cool. And I tell you, one thing that we all agreed upon was Braves fans, they travel. And in fact, for the first time since 2019, the Rays sold out 3 straight home games with the capacity being maxed out at 25,025 fans. And that's really cool for Tropicana Field to have that many fans there. It felt like a playoff type atmosphere. It felt like potentially a World Series because obviously a National League team in the Atlanta Braves, an American League team in your Tampa Bay Rays. And it was an electrifying atmosphere. However, the one thing is it felt like all Atlanta Braves fans. In fact, when they were chanting Eddie for Eddie Rosario, it was louder than Randy chants, even from Randyland in left field. And so that was unfortunate. I don't think that's necessarily a shot to all Rays fans whatsoever. I think that also coincides with Braves fans being here in the state of Florida too, and they're all traveling down because the Braves are the best team in Major League Baseball right now. But just that atmosphere at the Trop this weekend, Friday, Saturday, and yesterday as well, was insane. Win, lose, or draw, it was just really neat to witness a baseball game like that at Tropicana Field. Obviously, one of the least exciting stadiums in Major League Baseball, and also to catch up with the Pugh family too, who also agree that there's a shot that it could be a World Series featuring the Tampa Bay Rays and the Atlanta Braves.
Yeah, and that's a very interesting statistic there because if you go to Tampa, I mean, if any of you have ever been to Tampa, you see how many New York Yankees fans there are just in that little area. Even in St. Pete, a lot of the shops are owned by retired New Yorkian people, of course. And for that to be the first sold-out series in 2019 is pretty insane because the New York Yankees and Tampa Bay Rays play in Tropicana Field at least 2 or 3 series a season, probably 3 or 4. But for those not to get sold out and the Rays Braves to get sold out is a pretty big thing. And another thing is that I was thinking is before the Tampa Bay Rays were created in 1998, I feel like a lot of people in the area were either New York Yankee fans or they were Atlanta Braves fans. And I think that at the time, most people were probably leaning towards the Atlanta Braves. So a lot of the people that were there at this game may have just been Braves fans from the area because I don't think a lot of people are willing to travel, 10 hours driving to go to Tropicana Field. I think a lot of the fans are just in the area. That's why you see it right now because you just don't see the Braves and Rays play often. And when they do, the last time they did, I think, was 3 or 4 years ago, and that was in Atlanta. So it's something you don't see often. And like I said, I think that this is a thing that has to do with who lives in the Tampa Bay area. And it's, for the most part, sadly, it's Yankee fans, Braves fans, and then probably Rays fans. And maybe the Rays are a little bit more of a fan base there than the Atlanta Braves, which would make sense, of course. But the fact that there's so many Braves fans there in Tampa, I think, is really why we saw so many fans there and why it was the first sellout since 2019 for Tampa Bay.
Yeah, first consecutive sellout of 3 straight games at Tropicana Field. But obviously, with the home run derby, the All-Star break being here, there are some odds out for the home run derby featuring 8 of the best home run hitters, if you will, in Major League Baseball. Those that wanted to compete, those that were asked to compete include Randy Arozarena, and we'll get into that here momentarily, including odds too. But as you guys know, this show is always brought to you by Ivy Log Meat Processing, a newly renovated shop with great staff booking harvest dates. Right now, you can contact David and the crew at 706-745-0011 or visit ivylogmeatprocessing.com. That is ivylogmeatprocessing.com. Also, check them out on Facebook too, Ivy Log Meat Processing, or read the description down below. They make this possible each and every week. They're the ones that bring this show, not Celsius, although I was showing off the drink. Ivy Log Meat Processing makes this possible. So the home run derby odds are out for tonight's derby in Seattle. And we've got Lewis Robert Jr. against Adley Rutschman in the opening round. And then obviously we've got Adolis Garcia competing. He'll take on Randy Arozarena. They're actually friends. They have ties because they both played in the St. Louis Cardinals organization. Mookie Betts is competing against Vlad Guerrero Jr. Pete Alonso, who's won a couple of times in the past. He's a Tampa native. He'll take on Julio Rodriguez in tonight's home run derby. Before we get into odds, Spencers, what does your gut tell you about who wins just by hearing the names and what kind of season they've had this year?
Yeah, I've got to go Pete Alonso probably, just because he's so well experienced in this. Another guy that has really low odds for some reason is Mookie Betts. I think that's a good one. I think it's a very evenly matched up thing because I don't see Vlad Jr. winning it. I don't see Adley Rutschman winning it. And the two big names that really stand out to me are, of course, who's going to be favored is Pete Alonso. And then second, I really couldn't pick like a guy that is kind of on the same level as Pete Alonso because everybody else is an outfielder. None of these guys play any other position. There's no DHs in there besides a guy like Pete Alonso who will play first base or DH. And I think that that's going to be the thing is because he's been in this a couple of times now. He's won a couple of times. I'm pretty sure he won last year. And if I were a betting man, if I could bet legally in the state of Georgia on sports books, I would bet for Pete Alonso. And second place, I would just throw out one of the guys that's probably bottom 3 to get the best odds, which would probably be, at this point, Mookie Betts, Randy Arozarena, and then one other guy, because I really don't see Vladimir Guerrero Jr. winning it, like I said, and I really just see Pete Alonso kind of running away with this. But hopefully, if it's none of those guys, I hope that it's Randy Arozarena and he really gains some more attention or garners some more attention in the Tampa Bay area and picks up more fans, because I think that's a guy that baseball would like to build around, a guy that electric as Randy Arozarena, who's really struggled at the plate recently, so I don't think this is going to be an issue for him. It looks like he's been taking batting practice all the way back to last week against the Seattle Mariners, so maybe that has messed up his plate appearances as of recent. Hasn't looked good, but right now I don't think it really matters. Swing for the fences if you're Randy Arozarena, because tonight you're not really looking at the second half of the season. You're looking to win this thing, and you're looking to get more fans, and then you can worry about the season after the All-Star game on Tuesday.
Well, you talk about Randy Arozarena and the fact that he's struggled to hit the ball as of late. Now, yesterday in the win over the Atlanta Braves, he did have 2 hits, but over the course of 1, 2, 3, 4, over his last 4 games, he has 2 hits. Both of those came in the first half finale against the Atlanta Braves in a 10-4 win on Sunday against Atlanta. I don't know, maybe preparing for the home run derby has kind of thrown him off. Hopefully nothing major. It's something I talked about on Wise and Mathis at 953 WDAE with Nick Wise on Saturday, and I'll attach that show in the description below down in the comments and whatnot for you guys to check that out. But home run derby odds are out, and you talk about Pete Alonso. He won in 2019 and 2020, no home run derby due to the shortened season and COVID-19. Pete Alonso then followed up in 2021, winning again, and last year was actually Juan Soto that won. So, you talk about the last 3 home run derbies. Pete Alonso has won 2 of those, with Juan Soto competing last year and winning it, and Soto, of course, not competing this year. And you look at the odds for this year's derby, for tonight's derby, Pete Alonso plus 300, and then Vlad Guerrero plus 450, Lewis Robert Jr. plus 500, Julio Rodriguez plus 550, and then Adolis Garcia plus 600. Mookie Betts shocks me at plus 900. That might be a one that you snag. And then Randy Arozarena plus 900, Adley Rutschman at plus 1,600. So, yeah, I mean, I like the Mookie Betts bet, if you will, his odds, if you're going to play some money on this, or maybe even Adley Rutschman to maybe showcase and shock you in this home run derby tonight. Just saying bye to Jason Behringer here at DAE. But anyway, so, yeah, it should be an exciting derby. I don't know. I think Pete Alonso, the guy who's won before, probably gets it done tonight.
Yeah, another odd that was pretty enticing there was Luis Robert Jr., who is playing on a very bad Chicago White Sox team. I don't know if you've seen the recent things that they've done at the plate, but today or yesterday, Eloy Jimenez in an 0-2 count asked for times. Okay, this is a guy that can hammer the baseball. Asked for time with the umpire. The umpire didn't grant it. The count's 0-2. He sees the umpire not grant it, and he stays out of the box for the strikeout. Like, he didn't even go back in the box. That's how much these guys don't want to play. But Luis Robert can really crank the baseball. That guy has a ton of power. And if I were to pick one of the outfielders to win it, I'd probably go with Luis Robert. I like Adolis Garcia. I really just don't see Randy Arozarena winning this thing because, I mean, he's hit, 15 home runs this year, but I don't see him as the biggest power guy. We'll see. Maybe he'll turn it on, though, because the thing with Randy Arozarena, though, is whenever the lights come on, he's very, very good under pressure. He's very good in the playoffs. He was insane in the 2020 playoff run. And maybe, just maybe, he gets that same spark here in the home run derby and he just runs away with it. But if you're not betting a lot of money, Randy Arozarena might be a fun bet. But if you are betting a lot of money, you probably just want to be safe and bet Pete Alonso, which would be not a great payout. And this is a thing that could go with anybody to win this thing because, I mean, it comes down to who's throwing you the ball as well. That's another big thing. So we'll see how that goes. But I do like Luis Robert there as the fourth favorite.
Yeah, I think that's a solid pick. I'm going to go with Mookie Betts. That's my guess. You guys can fill in the comments below. Tweet us.
Oh, that's your guess to win?
Yeah.
Okay, my guess to win is Pete Alonso.
Pete Alonso, okay. So, and I think Pete Alonso probably wins, but if you're going to take a gamble here, I like Mookie Betts. And Nick Wise kind of pointed me in that direction, and I liked what he was saying. He is dominant right now. He's top 5 in majors and home runs. But anyhow.
Did I hear 25 for Mookie Betts?
That sounds right. Yeah, 25 homers.
That's insane because he's been a guy, at least early on in his career, where he didn't hit anything. I saw something recently that his first season, he didn't even hit a ball off the wall in his first entire 162-game season with the Dodgers. So for him to have 25 home runs at the All-Star break is pretty incredible. And another guy that I wish they could have squeezed into the All-Star game, but of course he has injuries. He's a pitcher as well. Shohei Ohtani probably would have lit up this home run derby, and that would have been a fun thing to watch. But Mookie Betts, 25 home runs this year is a ton for him. And I don't know if he's going to be able to do that in the home run derby. We'll see how that goes. But I think that's a good bet. Like you said, I think that's a good idea if you want to go with a guy like that. Because the rest of these guys probably aren't even in the top 5 for home runs. I don't know how many Pete Alonso has. He probably is. But the rest of these guys, like Luis Robert Jr. playing on a struggling White Sox team, we know Arozarena has probably 15. We know Vlad Guerrero Jr. is not having a great season this year with the Blue Jays. A lot of these guys aren't doing good. So I like Mookie Betts as my second option too. So that's a good choice as number 1 if you're a betting guy.
Yeah, Pete Alonso with 26, Randy Arozarena with 16. And I think Mookie Betts has 25, as you said, but he has been dominant this year. And I think it's going to be a fun home run derby to watch. Again, 26 home runs for Mookie Betts. He ties with Pete Alonso. Now, I know a lot of you are fans of either the Falcons, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, maybe even some Saints fans. We had Joe Mancuso on the podcast several times over the years. He's now playing pro ball there in Las Vegas. Quarterback. He's been on the podcast too. A couple of Carolina Panther fans too, and Steven, Morgan, Emily, and a whole lot more. Also want to shout out my guy Jonathan Everett, who always checks out the podcast. I never knew that he checked out the podcast till I went back to Blairsville last week. Was going into a grocery store. He stops me right outside. He's like, dude, Motivational Mathis 2 was awesome. How can I go back and find Motivational Mathis number 1? I said, scroll back like 7 episodes. And he said, keep that up. It motivated me. He just got back from, Korea. And
studying abroad.
Yeah, studying abroad. Spoke Korean. I mean, it was really cool to talk with him. But I know that there's a wide variety of fans here when it comes to the NFL. Several NFC South fans probably talking to you as well. But Buccaneers cornerback Carlton Davis.
Another name a fan of the AFC West. Lou Phillips III is tuned into the podcast today. Raiders fan.
He might not like us now that you shout out his entire name. He's probably like, what? No, but yeah, Lou, we appreciate you, my man. Thanks for checking out the pod. It was great to meet you a little bit over a week ago. But one Buccaneers cornerback, Carlton Davis, had some interesting comments in a sit-down print interview last week with Ty Dunn of GoLongTD.com. Now, if you guys don't know if Ty Dunn, he's had some great stories over the years, broke a couple of big stories, spoke with DeMar Hamlin, had an interview with Rachaad White, kind of take off. He's the Buccaneers running back. I mean, so much more. This guy is legitimate. He's great. I've been on his podcast, too, a few weeks back to talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And again, it's GoLongTD.com. Go check that out. But he sat down with Carlton Davis of the Buccaneers, and Carlton Davis said some interesting things here about the rest of the NFC South. That's right, the Falcons, the Panthers, the Saints. He said, anybody who feels we've lost Tom and lost something, and I'm quoting here, I'm quoting Carlton Davis, Buccaneers cornerback, is going to be in for a rude awakening. Tom was a great addition for us, but obviously it's a team sport. Obviously you need components to be successful. We still have some components, or still have those components, and I'm only getting better. He also added on, and our effing division is worse than what it was before. So when we run through the division, get to the playoffs, run through the playoffs, and it's the Super Bowl. This is Carlton Davis of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And he said, when we. He didn't say if or we could. He said, when we. I think is he forgetting about the fact that even with Tom Brady, they won just 8 games to win the NFC South last year? Is he also forgetting about the fact that no Tom Brady this year? Is he also forgetting it's an entirely new offensive scheme with a brand new offensive coordinator and Dave Canales, who came from Seattle? Is he forgetting about the defensive side of the ball, some of those players getting older? Is he forgetting that Todd Bowles is still the head coach of your Tampa Bay Buccaneers? How many games can you win with Todd Bowles? And also, just to say that the NFC South is getting worse than it was than last year is just ridiculous. Because Carolina, they drafted a new quarterback. Yeah, he's young. He's going to be a rookie, Bryce Young. We know of that. But they also added DJ Chark and Adam Thielen. So Carlton Davis might have his hands full on the outside twice this year. New Orleans, they got a new quarterback in Derek Carr, and I'm not saying he's great, but he's an upgrade from Jameis Winston. There's no doubt about that. An upgrade from Taysom Hill. And the Falcons drafted Bijan Robinson and also added Calais Campbell too. So to sit here and say that the rest of the division got worse and that practically losing Tom Brady is not a huge deal baffles me. And I'm not sure what Carlton Davis is talking about. I do get this is locker room talk, but to go out into an interview with press and say this in a sit-down interview one-on-one kind of shocks me. And maybe I'm alone in this. I know Nick Wise kind of agreed with me too on DAE as well. But Spence, how do you feel about this? I know that you and I are typically on different spectrums in regards to our opinions when it comes to stuff like this. I was worried about Wander last week. You not so much. How do you feel about Carlton Davis and his comments about the rest of the NFC South? And more importantly, the Buccaneers here in 2023 without Tom Brady and with Baker Mayfield, a guy who's a veteran quarterback, a journeyman at this point in his career that hasn't really accomplished too much besides one playoff run with the Browns years ago.
Yeah, I was trying to input a blunt joke here for Carlton Davis because he may need to put down what he is smoking. But again, if you kind of think back to last season, you got to put aside what Tom Brady was in his career. You think back to last year, and it was the most frustrating offense that I have watched. It was more frustrating than watching Jameis Winston throw 30 interceptions. It was the most frustrating Tempe offense that I've seen in terms of expectations, and reality was right here for the Buccaneers last year.
Wait, show how much
8
they might.
9.
We might have listeners here. How big of a gap is that, Spence, that you're showing on the video screen?
It's about a foot. But going 8-9 last season with Tom Brady, the weapons that they have, I think a ton of that had to do with not having the offensive line that they would have liked to have the entire season, because Ali Marpet retired before the season started. Ryan Jensen gets hurt in training camp. I mean, the offensive line was terrible. Donovan Smith finally gone from Tampa. The offensive line may have gotten better heading into this next season, okay? I get that Luke Gedeke is going to have to be the right guard, probably going to have to fill one of the holes. That's your only bad thing on the offensive line if Tristan Wirfs can hold down the left side now, if he can. And I think that obviously he's not going to be the best left tackle in the league his first season, but he's going to be eons better than what we had with Donovan Smith aside from the 2020 run. And now you've got a mobile quarterback. And the Buccaneers last season, Everyone remembers who the offensive coordinator was. It was Byron Leftwich. Leftwich is one of the worst play callers. I'm telling you right now, he will never get another NFL job as an offensive coordinator ever again with what he did with this Buccaneers offense. They were either throwing up one-on-one to Mike Evans probably twice a game, and the rest of the time you're running on first downs, never snapping the ball with anybody in motion. The Buccaneers last season had 2 plays the entire year where they snapped the ball with the receiver in motion, and both of those plays went to a backup receiver. I blank on his name. I think he's going to have a good season next year, but he was a rookie receiver, and those were the only 2 plays where a guy was in motion. The Dave Canales offense is going to have a ton of players in motion. You're going to have a mobile quarterback, and all that Baker Mayfield has to do. So many more options for the quarterback to throw it to. This is nothing against Tom Brady last season, but he was very immobile. He did not look good. He didn't look as focused as he was in the game for his entire career because of the divorce that he had just gone through. And the Buccaneers had the worst rushing offense of all time. Now you've got, of course, a new starting running back in Tampa Bay. You've gotten rid of Leonard Fournette. You have nothing there. You have Rashad White at running back, wearing number 1 now. You have probably an improved offensive line. You have the exact same wide receiving core who's going to mesh together better, and Russell Gage hopefully will be healthy heading into this season. And your defense looks the exact same as last season, which the defense kind of was the only thing that was keeping the Buccaneers in the games last year. And you still have Todd Bowles as a defensive-minded head coach, but the thing is, if Dave Canales is the only guy that controls the offense, if they can do that, where Bowles has nothing to do with timeouts, nothing to do with anything like that on the offensive side of the football, the Buccaneers may end up just somehow winning one more game than they did last season. This is a team that can win 9 games if Baker Mayfield plays like 2020 or 2019 Baker Mayfield. If he doesn't play like that, the Buccaneers are going to be terrible, of course. But the thing with Carlton Davis is the defense looks the exact same. The offensive line looks better. The offense looks, for the most part, the same, aside from Tom Brady, who had a very bad last season. No one can look away from that, because last season was just as bad as his 2019 campaign with the New England Patriots. So you've got a quarterback who is hopefully going to spark a fire in this offense, and the Buccaneers could go 9-8. I mean, I like Baker Mayfield as a guy that can lead a team, and I think that's all he's going to have to do if the Buccaneers offense looks as what we think it will with Dave Canales as the offensive coordinator.
There are a lot of ifs there, and I know that that's kind of the general consensus with anybody that watches football, any Buccaneers fan. However, Tom Brady, it wasn't his best year, but was it really that bad? He still was responsible for winning 3 games. You take away 3 wins from Tom Brady just with the 2-minute drives, and the Bucs are a 5-win team. So I know what you're saying, and I know what you're meaning, but also if you take away Brady, that's a 5-win team last year. They do not win the division. Carlton Davis, Bucs cornerback, also said the rest of the division got worse. Well, the Bucs were 8-9 last year. The rest of the division was 7-10. Panthers went 7-10. Saints went 7-10. Falcons went 7-10. So Carlton Davis is saying that the rest of the division does not even win 7 games. There's no way that's the case whatsoever. When you talk about the drafts, and Carolina will probably be at the bottom. Atlanta has a question mark, and Desmond Ridder, but they already had a good rushing attack last year. They have added Bijan Robinson. I just don't see what Carlton Davis is saying here. Now, Tampa Bay could win the division. I'm not saying they won't. I think it's more unlikely. I don't think it's as confident and as written in stone as Carlton Davis has made it out to be on golongtd.com.
Yeah, the thing is it sounds outlandish at first, but I believe the NFC South is going to lay out the exact same way that it did last season, because obviously there's been a couple of improvements. Atlanta still has Desmond Ridder as their starting quarterback. He showed absolutely nothing to me last season, okay? You have the New Orleans Saints. Their head coach is still going to be Dennis Allen, and that is the thing with New Orleans. If they saw Sean Payton, I'm thinking they're running away with the division like they did for 10 years in a row. But they've got Dennis Allen as their head coach. They've got Derek Carr, who is a good quarterback, okay, a good quarterback. But he has not played his best over the last couple of seasons with the Raiders. He had Devontae Adams last year. That was a good connection. If Michael Thomas is healthy, they may be good, but I see them winning 7 or 8 games as well. And then you have the Carolina Panthers, who have a rookie quarterback in Bryce Young. I mean, I see what he's saying. The division did not really get better. I mean, of course.
But did it get worse?
It may have.
I don't know, man. He said
the Saints don't have Alvin Kamara.
We assume.
The Atlanta Falcons have Desmond Ridder still, who wasn't the starting quarterback at one point that last season. They've lost a couple of guys, of course, like every team. I think that they're the only team that may have improved, but if they've improved, it's maybe by a win. They may end up with 8 wins. I think that the division's going to be won again this season with 8 wins, and it could be the Buccaneers, because on paper, they keep getting ranked the 28th best team in the league. I don't know how. It makes no sense. Look at the roster. They have the best roster in the NFC South by far. Look at the roster. They're a team that's been in the playoffs recently. Guess who hasn't been in the playoffs recently? The Atlanta Falcons or the Carolina Panthers. And the last time the New Orleans Saints were in the playoffs, Drew Brees had to retire. So we'll see how that goes. They've got a new head coach. The Buccaneers have at least a little bit of stability in the head coach area with Todd Bowles being a head coach. And another thing that's being brought up by a lot of pundits over the NFL recently is that Todd Bowles finally got to hire his own staff. He's got his new offensive coordinator. Of course, he's still the defensive coordinator. He's gotten a couple other guys in. I mean, this is Todd Bowles' actual first year for the Buccaneers. We'll see how he does. I just think that the Buccaneers have improved a little bit. And, I mean, not improved, but they have not gotten better. They have not gotten worse. And I don't think that Brady was Brady last year at all. I mean, looking at his stats compared to 2020 and 2021, what the Buccaneers got out of Tom Brady, last season was him falling off a cliff finally, like Max Kellerman wanted for all these years. That was last year.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. That's fair. I think we're going to have to watch this all unfold. I think this is more locker room talk for Carlton Davis. Now it's bulletin board material for the other teams in the NFC South, the Falcons, the Saints, and the Panthers. I absolutely would stamp this up in the locker room to refer.
But what did the Falcons, Saints, and what have they done as of recent? Because Atlanta added a running back to a team that could already run the football, and they ended up with 7 wins.
He's a receiver too.
Looks just as bad as it did last year. Of course, they have Calais Campbell. That's the only guy that they've really added on the defense side of the ball that's worth anything, or at least a top 10. He's 36 years old, though. We don't know how he's going to play. The New Orleans Saints added Derek Carr to replace Andy Dalton. Are these guys that big of a difference from each other? What else did they add? I can't really think of anything else they added. They
added that running back, Jamal Williams.
Yeah, a guy that can run 1-yard touchdowns. They may be the team that could win the division. That's the only other team I see winning the division because the Atlanta Falcons are a year away. Next year when Atlanta gets their quarterback, they're going to be good. But this year with Desmond Ridder, a guy they didn't even want, they drafted him 3rd round last year, and you saw how he played. I think that I don't think they really want to win anything this year because if they do, Desmond Ridder is their franchise quarterback, and has he really shown anything? He's also an older rookie last year. I think he was the 2nd oldest quarterback, kind of what we have this year with Malik Willis. I forgot where he got drafted to, but a lot like Malik Willis heading into this season. So we'll see exactly how that goes, but I think it's the Saints or the Buccaneers this year with the division, and I think the Buccaneers on paper are the best team in the NFC South.
Well, great stuff here on the podcast. As always, we always want to hear from you guys as well, guys and girls, at TCM_pod. Comment down below, like this video, like our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Leave a review. We always appreciate it. And we will be back next week. We'll take a look around the NFL. We'll come back to our predictions for the Home Run Derby, the All-Star Game, the whole 9 yards right here on TCM Pod. As always, thank you guys. Shout out to Ivy Log Meat Processing. That brings you another edition of the podcast.